whatever piece of casework I get, I am very bold in asking the constituents, do they have debt problems? Because debt underlies almost every other issue, whether it be domestic violence, housing, benefit problems, ill health, mental ill health. And what there is a tsunami of debt in our community.
Hello and welcome to the We Are Labour podcast. I am Dan Greef, your host, and this is the show that highlights our amazing Labour candidates in the constituencies we need to win to form the next Labour government. As you hear the stories and experiences from our candidates, I want you to think, how can you help? What can you do to make the difference? Can you go and leaflet, knock on doors, donate money, or phone canvass voters? By giving a little of your time and or money, it will make a massive difference. This election will be won by Labour members doing our bit to help get the Labour message of hope out to our communities. Let's crack on with the show. Hello, welcome to We Are Labour, another episode getting closer to the general election, just 2 weeks to go. So what are you doing to get involved? How are you campaigning? Are you campaigning? If not, get involved if you can. If you're a Labour supporter, join the party. If you're a Labour member, please get involved in your local campaign. You'll find your battleground seats on Labour Hub. Now, today I'm talking to Mike Kane. Mike Kane, really interesting guy. I've known him for quite a few years now. He was the MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East, and hopefully will be returned there again very soon. But he was also the Shadow Minister for Aviation, Maritime and Space. I know, space, right? I was quite excited when I saw that. So in particular, we talk about the ports and, of course, how that's part of Labour's plan for the next government. Because, and I'm going to talk about this because it does relate to the manifesto, the economic plan that Labour has is very different to the Conservative one, if there is a plan at all, that is, for the Conservatives. And the reason I say that is because if you get asked on the doorstep, what's the difference between Conservatives and Labour? If you get asked, for instance, what is Labour going to do about the economy, then you can talk about securenomics. And this does come from the manifesto, the 5 missions, but also, really importantly, a speech that one of my heroines, Rachel Reeves, gave about a year ago. And she went into explaining that the problem we've had over the last, 13 at the time when she made the speech, but 14 years of Tory government is a laissez-faire approach. This is very much what the Conservatives have always done. Thatcher was very much a big part of this. Obviously, Cameron followed in her footsteps. And the idea that the free market can somehow manage everything. By there being a demand in the economy, some individual or individuals will come along and realize they can meet that demand profitably by selling them a good or a service. I run a business myself. That's exactly what I do with my customers. I make something they want to buy. They pay me to make it. I employ people to make it with me, and then we all pay ourselves from that sale. Now, the difference here is that just hasn't been working for us as a country. And it might be all very well for a cup of coffee or a piece of cake, but it's not really the same when it comes to the security that we face at the moment, or lack of security we face in the economy. So this is what Rachel Reeves said in that speech. I'm just going to read some of her diagnosis of the problem that we have right now. First came the brutal austerity that followed the financial crash, where the Conservative government cut spending far deeper and faster than our international peers. Demand was sucked out of the economy. Investment, the lifeblood of economic growth, stagnated. And for all the bitterness of the medicine, the patient got no healthier. Even before COVID struck, government debt was 30% higher than it had been 10 years after. And after austerity came the chaos. First, we had Brexit without a plan, introducing pervasive uncertainty into our economic life. Next came the madness of Liz Truss's drive-by premiership, and she goes on to explain exactly what happened there. So what she's diagnosing there really is how we've got sick, is because the Tory government has completely set us up for this. Desperate austerity completely cut back all our spending, and that did actually hold back the economic growth in this country. It meant that everything stagnated, investment dried up, all of these things pretty much came to a standstill. And then, of course, after that, we had shocks to the system, shocks we were not prepared for. And on top of that, not only did we have shocks such as COVID, we've also had people like Liz Truss come along with her kamikaze budget. So it's been a disastrous time for the economy. Now, Securonomics is all about how the infrastructure in the country and certain industries get invested in and work in partnership with the government to really make sure we develop and deliver the most secure and also the best life for its people in this country. So how is it we can grow our wealth? How can we actually have economic growth with a higher tax return so it's better for all of us that are investing in our services? And of course, ports are a big part of that. We talk about that with Mike today on the show. I hope you find that interesting. So if anyone asks you about what that means, point them towards a manifesto, see how it is we have an industrial strategy to really have a plan to bring about actual growth, working in partnership with business, not against them, none of the rhetoric and the gimmicks and the headlines, but rather a grown-up adult approach to working with industry, with the private sector to develop a better infrastructure and better jobs for a greener, more secure economy. I'm just going to finish with a bit from her speech last year, which I think kind of sums up this whole idea of Securonomics. Building the industries that guarantee Britain's economic security, forging resilience at home while creating new partnerships abroad, and bringing together an active state in partnership with a vibrant market. This would be us not only working better as a country, but also better with the European Union and with America, as they are going down a similar route at the moment to really think how your country and how your region can be more secure, invest in its citizens, and also work with the private sector for growth. I think that's really, really positive. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Mike Kane. He does actually add a song to our playlist, Doorstep Win 24, so go check that out as well. And I hope you have a great weekend leafting, putting up boards, whatever you're doing. I'll be back next week with another interview, as will then be 1 week from the general election. Take care and have a great weekend. Well, I'm really delighted now to be joined by Mike Kane. Can't say MP because he's not actually at the moment, but when you're listening to this, hopefully he'll be returned to be once again the MP for Wythenshawe and Sale East. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be on the show. Great to see you again.
Yeah, it's like a little reunion. Like I knew you for quite a while there back in 2017 with Catholics for Labour. I haven't seen you for a few years, so it's kind of a little catch-up as well, which is awesome. And how's the election campaign going for you at the moment, and who are you twinned with?
Well, it seems an age now since the 22nd of May, I think, when Rishi Sunak called it. I was actually sat in my office that goes out onto Whitehall, so I could hear Steve Bray singing "Things Can Only But Get Better," and I had the window open with the rain coming in on my face while watching it on my computer screen. So I had this immersive experience of
isn't that like a 3D cinema experience or something?
3D,
like you can see
4D,
it, feel
5D.
it, smell it.
Yeah.
You can smell the soggy soup at the stand. Yeah.
Well, we were in Westminster that day, and the day was dawning. It was getting clearer that it was coming as the day went on. It was a PMQs day, that's right. So we were in for PMQs, and we knew there was something afoot around that. I mean, the campaign's going great. We were well prepped. My agent is Emma Brickell, who is excellent, and I have a great campaign team, and we prepared our materials. In this day and age, if we're going to be sort of educational about this, you get print packages, you get digital packages, you buy into them, and then you drop your words, your literature, your photos. So there was a little bit of a scramble to get some fresh photographs with a bit less hair than the ones I had.
I didn't notice anything, Mike. What are you talking about?
To make sure that they were up to date, so all's good. Yeah, so I'm out canvassing in my own constituency tonight. But key to a lot of MPs, because we have single member constituencies first past the post, we have to win in the seats. We have to win to form a government. So my twinning arrangement is with Bolton West, which is about a 30-minute drive from where I am in South Manchester. And we've got about 3 cars going over today to help Phil Brickell, who's chasing an 8,500 Tory majority at the moment.
So it's looking pretty good for him, I'd have thought. I mean, we don't take it for granted, but the polls are in our favour. So hopefully that should be doable if we really put our effort into it, right?
Well, we have to say the usual things, caveats, when it comes to polls. The only poll that matters
Yes.
is on
Yeah.
election day. But we've also got to remember that lots and lots of people are voting right now. Postal votes were landing last week on the mats. So yes, we have got ourselves into a good position, but still making those conversations, talking to those voters, identifying those people we need to switch to win those seats if we want to form a Labour government is still critical and vital, and is going on up and down the country. And it's just heartening to see, how many volunteers are out and about all the time doing that work.
Yeah, fantastic. And everyone listening here today, if you haven't as yet, if you don't know where your battleground seat is, please look it up on Labour Hub. You'll be able to be told exactly where to go to. And we just need to win those seats. There's nothing worse than, having some seats that have huge majorities for Labour, but overall we don't win because it's just you've only been opposition MP, haven't you? So can you describe the frustration sometimes of being in that situation where you haven't got a Labour government, and so everything you do is kind of, there's a brick wall in front of you, I'd imagine.
Well, I would, yes, I mean, it's a by-election winner, for those who don't know me, in 2014, the unfortunate circumstances that my predecessor died, Paul Goggins, who was brilliant. And I've only known while in Westminster opposition. Having a portcullis on your letterhead, Dan, still brings an awful lot of gifts, an awful lot of power to change things and to do things. I'll remind all activists that power isn't binary. It's not about being in or out of office. I've seen politicians in office who look pretty powerless to me, and some of this current government could certainly
that's right. That's true. Yeah.
Fill that criteria. So the idea that we could get the change we want in the country around our schools, our hospitals, our healthcare, getting people into work, and the green energy plan, because I'm currently shadow aviation, maritime and space minister. So maritime is going to be absolutely key in terms of ports and offshore wind and power. And basically regenerating our coastal communities as well. Many of us now in the country live in cities, and for a long time Labour has been piling its votes on in the wrong places. Huge majorities in constituencies like mine, and in Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, Birmingham, and all those places, and we've been losing votes in our suburbs, market towns and coastal communities. And I think this time we're getting the offer just right, that we need to make sure that people who are born and brought up in places like the ones we're targeting can go on to flourish with dignity in good, high-skilled, well-paid jobs, whether it be through degree level apprenticeships, and can stay in their hometowns. And I think that's really encouraging, the way Keir has brought ourselves and built that coalition over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Polly Billington actually last week, of course, who's standing in East Thanet, and she did raise a lot of those kind of coastal town issues, and you sort of think, those parts of the country have very much felt left behind by the government, haven't they? Like that, they were very strong to vote, for instance, to leave the European Union because they probably had this sense of desperation for change. And actually, I think this is a real opportunity for change now with the Labour government, where we actually refocus on the whole country, not just cities taking off and leaving them behind, but also opportunities and education opportunities, job opportunities. I mean, GB Energy, for instance, is going to be a huge part of that, isn't it, for job creation and actually really bring security to poorer families.
Oh, very much so. The number one issue day in, day out is cost of living, because we knock on the doors, and energy has been a huge part of that. And just energy security in an unsecure world, I think, is going to be key. We saw how frightening it was when Putin turned off the gas taps at the start of the Ukraine war. So there's a couple of reasons to do it. One is energy security, one is to reduce our carbon emissions, and one is to reduce bills for customers who are really struggling. And that's why I think coastal communities, even though I don't represent one, are going to be key to this transition, because there's a whole heap of agglomeration around coastal communities and the maritime industry that people just don't see. And I have the honour of seeing it as Shadow Maritime Minister. And I think if we can get those industries working together collaboratively, putting out the degree level apprenticeships, the apprenticeships, for the new jobs of the future, the just transition is within our grasp.
Yeah. So I just want to go into your brief, if I may. Now, I appreciate that after the Parliament is over, and now wait in this period of being, waiting for the general election to happen. We don't know if you're definitely going to get this job, and then you might get something else for all we know. But let's ask you a bit about that, because you said aviation, maritime. Did you say space as well? I didn't realise you had that brief.
I have space, yeah. My staff team have been trying to send me on a field trip, but I think I've read that play.
Doesn't go
so,
well,
so
does it?
effectively, Dan, I have space ports. So whether we have a port in the southwest or up in Shetland, there will be
Wow.
responsibility around that within the brief.
That's amazing. So at the moment, of course, it's just like a preparing for if that does happen, rather than do you do anything actively on our space policy though, or is that just planning for the future
Strangely,
potentially?
just before the House rose, we had a terrific debate on one of the Fridays, unusually on space and space policy. And, the actual innovation, research and technology and development going on in the UK is vast. It runs into billions of pounds. So
Wow, incredible.
it is the coming industry as well.
See, one thing I've noticed about your career and also Daniel Zeichner's career, and I think it's probably a reflection of most of our shadow Labour team, is that you've been in that position for about 4 years, haven't you, doing that role? How many
Yeah.
Tories have you seen in that time as your opposite? Has it been like a bit of a rotating door?
Well, I think my current Oppo is it Anthony Brown, one of the Cambridgeshire
He's my MP.
MPs. Yeah, he's your MP,
Yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
yeah, nice guy to boot. Don't agree with his politics, but interestingly, he got the gig because it changed again a few months ago, and I stood at the dispatch box and welcomed him to his place, which is etiquette in the House of Commons, and said, "You must be my sixth or seventh."
Wow.
Minister in my 4-year term. And I said, good luck with the time you've got. So,
Fortuitous. See,
fortuitous,
because
yes.
the thing is, so you and him, right? So you and Daniel Zeister, right? You were in position there for a few years, and I noticed with him as well. You get that gives you time, and the time gives you the ability to properly learn the brief, get to know people, the network, who's like who are the decision makers in the industry, and all these things. And I think it's irresponsible that the other side have had such a turnover where, I mean, how could they possibly do the job properly when they don't really know the brief very well? And within a few months, they've gone again. I mean, it just seems totally irresponsible government to me.
Well, I think that pledge around stability is actually key because industry has seen this. It goes out of its way. It builds a relationship with the minister, the secretary of state, and then before they know it, a few months later, they're gone. I mean, in Michelle Dongland's
Yeah,
case, as education secretary of state, she only lasted a day. But to be fair to her, she couldn't really
crazy.
do any damage in that time. So. It's so. I mean, from my movement for change days, Dan, building relationships is sort of key to the politics that I espouse, and that when I used to teach people about civil society and power and governance, that building good relationships is key to politics.
Yeah.
It's not about gotcha and scratching your opponent's eye out. And so the 4 years has meant the Association of British Ports, the British Ports Association, Airlines UK, Airports UK, the space industry. I've had time to sit and talk and learn and visit, and people know know me, know where I'm coming from, know where I want to go. If I'm fortunate enough, if firstly there's a Labour government, and secondly I get to carry on with the portfolio. But what will be will be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck with all that, and thank you for everything you've done so far. I get the impression, though, for this Labour government coming in, that the collaboration seems much more there than we've had for the last 14 years. So, you talk about the economy, or you talk about the sort of green policies we have. It seems like the private sector, government working together to try and find solutions to problems rather than just headlines and newspapers. And I get that impression more and more. And I mean, you must obviously get that from being part of the team as well. That there's kind of this collaboration approach, and that people are feeling like it's an optimistic period of change that we're facing. Can I just ask in particular about the green agenda, because that's a big part of a thought about transport, right? And the thing I like about the missions are the missions weren't just literally the plan for the Treasury, the plan for Department of Health, but rather they're kind of mixing it together. Can I just ask about how like the green policies will come into transportation? Is that something you could just sort of briefly describe?
Yeah, well, firstly, Lou had two great fortuitous announcements. Lou Haig, that is, who's the Shadow Secretary of State for Transport, before the election. One was bringing the rail industry
Yeah.
back in, and once the contracts are up, and we launched that at trainline.uk in London, that we can make ticketing simpler, more effective, and maybe one day a national tap in, tap out. Who knows? It's not a policy pledge this
Wow.
time round. But what that suddenly means is that people can rock up to their local train station, the national train station, get on a train with confidence, know it's going to be run on time, it's going to be clean, it's going to be regular. And so suddenly that completely begins to decarbonise, where people are not reliant on, the private motor car to get their places, because they can rely on the public transport. And then the bus announcement I thought was particularly pertinent. We're manufacturing buses in the UK. It's the most used travel, yet sometimes the least talked about in terms of
I
politics,
agree.
but by
I
our
think
constituents.
2017 we didn't talk about enough, did we? Like, basically,
Yeah,
I live in an area where there aren't trains apart from the Cambridge to London or whatever.
yeah,
You don't really have access. Buses are it, and there aren't many
yeah,
of them. So that
yeah.
hugely transforms the rural community, doesn't it? The bus.
Well, I know your bit of the world, having spent some time in sort of Bluntisham, St Ives. I saw the difference the guided busway made
Yes.
to those communities. But what we'd seen before that around Cambridgeshire in particular is absolutely people becoming prisoners in their own home if they didn't have a car and they lived in one of those rural villages, Erith, Bluntisham,
Yeah.
all those places, because the Tories over the year had strict local government, which then had to strip the subsidies, which meant that unless you owned a private car, which Lou has been saying some really good stuff about that as well, because the insurances have gone through the roof, the fuel charges have gone through the roof, that people just didn't have a choice. So giving the people a choice in transport and making sure that transport, public transport is world class, is going to be absolutely key to our decarbonisation plans.
Fantastic. And also, I guess, we see transport as the common good for society. It's better for the environment, it's better for families, for pensioners, for people who need to get about. But also, it doesn't have to be there just as a profit-making scheme for a company like we've had at the moment, and they just literally go on the profit basis. It's the profit of everybody in society. It'd make everything better, wouldn't it, to have proper transport, including, of course, like you said, our environment. No, I think it's a really important brief, and I'm so appreciative for what you've done in that as a shadow, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you get a chance to look at that if we come into office. Okay, so I was going to ask then, what are the issues that are coming up on the doorstep that you've noticed? I know you said about cost of living. Do you want to just expand on that a little bit more and tell us, as an MP, your experiences of what what your constituents are going through, because that's the thing that I think is really important, right? The MP is probably the most connected person to what's happening on the ground, because that's who your boss is. So can you tell us a bit about what it's been like the last 14 years, or the last, how long you've been an MP, 10 years, and the things that are coming up on the doorstep?
So for me, Dan, if you talk to my casework team and we work together on this, whatever piece of casework I get, I am very bold in asking the constituents, do they have debt problems? Because debt underlies
Right.
almost every other issue, whether it be domestic violence, um, housing, benefit problems, ill health, mental ill health. And what there is a tsunami of debt in our communities. I have 3,000 families containing 5,000 children owing, £40 million. I'd have
Oh,
to
wow.
update those figures, but to the utility companies and to the others. And to be fair to utility companies, they're usually very good when we contact them. I'm not criticising them, but people are
Yeah.
saying on the doorstep during the short campaign that they just can't make ends meet. And they can't get to the end of the month, and then they're using these payday loan lenders. They're using their credit cards, and of course that just spirals up the debt. So working locally as a constituency MP, I work very closely with my credit unions. We try and get employers to do payroll deduction at source, that people are
Yeah.
saving, because 23 million people don't have 500 quid in the bank. So one of their white goods goes, they've got to borrow. We also do things like debt advice days and debt advice sessions. We work closely with the CAB, Step Change, all those partners. as well. So I think personal debt is one of the crushing issues of the day, and we might not view it in those terms, but when people say cost of living, it often lies behind it.
And the mental health crisis that goes alongside that, like you said. I mean, families who are in debt, who are struggling, that is awful. I mean, that is really truly a terrible situation. You know, robbing people to pay Paul, almost like trying to keep the debt moving around just to survive, is not a good way to live a life at the moment, is it?
No,
Housing as
people
well.
are
I mean, sorry, go on.
people are frightened to open the brown envelopes coming through. So we
Yeah,
work with organisations like Christian Poverty and Step Change, who will take the brown envelopes off people and then give them a plan back to financial
yeah.
security. Because in terms of the mental health, this is my plea to employers out there, is that your employees' mental health will be much more secure if they are financially secure.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I love that. So true. So in that case then, how would the manifesto transform Britain? I mean, what in particular do you love in that manifesto you think, yeah, this is going to make a difference to my constituents?
Uh, well, building the homes.
Yeah.
We have, I forget the statistic. No, I don't forget the statistics. In Manchester City Council alone area, not the Greater Manchester, I think there are something like 15,000 people on a waiting list currently. Dan. In
Wow.
my town centre, where I put a bid together for the levelling up, I finally got it, but what a crock that policy has been. I have the room for 2,500 homes, and I've been at this for 7 or 8 years trying to get these homes built and the town regenerated. Very close to a big announcement just after the election in terms of that. But in Sale Town Centre, I've been trying to build 250 homes, but the money, the odds just don't stack up. If I slightly changed Wythenshawe Hospital, which is a vast hospital site in my constituency, they want to build 1,000 socially owned homes for key
Wow.
workers in the health service. But under this government, it's just been sclerotic in terms of, and these are brownfield sites. I'm not talking about going into the Cheshire Greenbelt or anything like that. This is just building
Yeah.
homes that are required, needed, would be funded, but they've just had no vision at all, this government. So we're left with this housing crisis, this rent crisis, particularly where you live in Cambridge, and amazingly, I mean, it's just unbelievable what's going on in London for young people. And yet we have the land, resources, the willingness to do it. We just need a bold government to get out there and do it. And I've been really pleased with what we've been saying nationally about what the 1.5 million homes. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be this difficult, but this government has made it this difficult.
It's really interesting, that, isn't it? Is it? I always wonder: is it the lack of vision, like you said? Is it because there's been a change of prime minister and team so often that they just don't know what they're delivering? Because it was announced by George Osborne, who then translated it through Boris Johnson's government, who changed it through Liz Truss or whatever. I mean, it's weird how at the end of 14 years, it's very hard to say what this government has achieved, isn't it? Really,
Yeah,
I can't think of anything really
no,
that they have achieved for the better. And that is a shameful reflection on any. That's not even being a Labour person criticising the Tories. I'm just talking about as a citizen looking at a government and saying, I've got a blank page here of achievement. That is quite a damning reflection on a government, isn't it?
yeah, it's just had no vision, guts, or gravitas. It's chased its tail, and it never recovered from the Brexit referendum. I'm not saying yay or nay to how the country voted, but basically, this is a government that's just looked internally at itself and, like I said, chased its tail and has been frightened of its own shadow. So, you see everybody saying, I want more houses, but I don't want them here. You've had this terrible NIMBYism going
Yeah.
on that the government has absolutely kowtowed to. I'm just hope that we're saying the right things, we're doing the right things, that we're just going to have to be bolder and make the tough choices. And yes, they are tough choices, and some people won't like them initially. But when your grandchildren are getting homes that they can buy, I think more people were made homeless last year than bought a home. Dan, what
Whoa! I
what
didn't know
sort of
that.
country? Where what sort of country where does that happen? We want our young people to either be able to afford to rent or to afford to buy, and we need a decent, adequate supply coming through and in our existing towns and cities, replacing that is derelict will be key to this. But also, we've talked about these sort of brown greenfield sites that, old petrol stations, eyesores, technically in the green belt, not in the green belt. But in addition to that, Steve Reed said so much about the enhancement of nature, and I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's the other bit of the manifesto. We're laying waste to our countryside, to our farmers, to our rivers through the sewage, and we're losing biodiversity, by the bucket load, and that we will, in addition to the house building, we will, begin to care for creation as well, which I think is absolutely key to a future Labour government.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely, it's the whole picture of the country, isn't it? It's not just an urban government. It's not a rural government. It's everyone. I think that's so important. It all works together. So I know you're short for time, and I know you're going off to campaigning in a moment. So I've got some slightly more fun questions. One in particular that you don't know about, which is a bit of a trick question. We'll see what your answer is to that one. But the first one is, if Starmer's lucky enough to become our MP, and we get that announcement on the 5th of July that he's won the election, and if you were asked to serve in any department as an actual minister, which one would you go for and why?
Oh, please let me, if it was possible to keep the current brief, that I could see it over the line, I'd be more than happy. I'm massively interested in Irish politics too, Dan. So, I always keep my eye on that as well.
Yeah, okay. And as we know, of course, the last few years, Irish-British politics has been very tense, hasn't it, over deals, etc. So it's a very, very important time for that. Okay, next question then is a bit of a fun one. If you are then given the call one day from Radio 4, Desert Island Discs are on the line, they're going to send you to the desert island, which song would you take with you and why? If you just had to choose one. Mind you, you could take your instruments, right? You're a flautist, a piper. You could do it yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh, a strange piece, but I suppose my favourite piece of music is a piece of medieval music. It's Allegri's Misery, and that would be the one piece I would always reach into the iPhone for if I could.
Love it. Crying out for mercy on your island. I absolutely love that. Okay. I thought you'd say things would only get better, but to be fair, that is on the playlist already. So all these songs are being added, by the way, to a Spotify playlist called Doorstep Win 24. So the members are going out leafleting, listening to these choices. So there might be a bit of a change from something like Bananarama to your choice, but they're going to be listening to that as they're on their doorstep round. I love that idea. Okay. So the next fun question I've got for you is very particular to you. Okay. And you might actually upset these other two gentlemen. So Alistair Campbell, Ian McNichol, and Mike Kane. Who's a better piper and why? And by the way, I do appreciate they're different types of pipes. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna upset the Celts here.
No, same type of pipes. They're all Highland pipes. It's just that I play Irish music. So what Ian McNichol would say would be the red-haired boy hornpipe. I would say would be the jolly beggar man, because the Irish invented the bag before the Scottish. Who's the best piper? Oh, me by a country mile. Yeah.
He said that too. I did actually ask him.
I have jammed with Ian on our chances in his office when he was General Secretary.
And basically, he was just left embarrassed by the end of it, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, he's good.
I think he won a piping competition or something, or his grandfather, I think he did. Yeah, he was on the show talking about that. So yeah, I would have to go Labour Party conference. I want to hear this for sure. It'd be absolutely amazing. Right. So as we come to the end, Mike,
I have seen the Labour Party conference out many years ago before I was an MP. I played the flute. I did the red flag. So.
Did you? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I think it was when the party had no money one time.
Get Mike out with his flute quickly.
Got to get Mike out with his flute. Yeah.
So how can people get involved in the campaigns, and particularly, of course, your battleground seats as well? What's the best way that members can now help to secure that Labour victory?
Oh, log on, join the Labour Party. Log on, find the seat nearest you where you can help, and get out there and do it.
Yeah, you know what, and actually, it doesn't really matter what your skill set is. There's something you can do in the Labour Party, right? So if you're not maybe the sort of talky type, leafleting is really useful, or doing a jobs back in the campaign centre. If you're more the extrovert type, go canvassing. I love canvassing personally. There are things that everyone can do. So I just want to say thank you so much, Mike. Good luck with your campaign. And
I have three canvassers at my door knocking now, about to pick me up. So thank you,
I
Dan.
understand. Thank you and take care, mate.
All right.
Before I go, may I ask a massive favour? Like this podcast and smash that subscribe button. Leave a review. Share this podcast with other Labour Party members, your CLPA executive, and anyone who, like us, wants to fight for the next Labour government our country so desperately needs. If you're a candidate and wish to come onto the show, then email me at labourpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, bye for now.